G'day there guys, unironic crippling addiction to YouTube here. It's your main man Markee and welcome back to another episode of r/AmiTheA. Now if you love today's bloody good content, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, and enjoy all of my words that come out of my mouth today. Posted by user AmiTheA Crybaby. Titled, Am I the a-hole for taking attention away from the bride at a wedding? I suffer from panic disorder, which means I tend to suffer panic attacks on a regular basis. They're usually triggered by external stimuli, especially if it's related to my C-PTSD, but they can also happen seemingly out of nowhere. I was abused repeatedly as a child, and am still dealing with the fallout in adulthood. Fast forward to last weekend. My girlfriend's cousin, let's call her Susan, was getting married, and invited me to come to the wedding as a +1. It was a very small, intimate ceremony, but relatively safe given the pandemic restrictions. I'd already been feeling on edge earlier that morning after an argument with my dad, but decided to come anyway, thinking being with my girlfriend's family would help get my mind off of things. Sadly, this on-edge feeling didn't go away. I tried to hold in my anxiety to keep the peace, but it wasn't working. My girlfriend tried calming me down, holding my hand, and assuring me everything was okay. After a few minutes, I got up during the vows and headed for the lobby and tried to calm down. My girlfriend got up with me. A few people stared at us as we left. After a while, I did feel better, and some relatives asked me if I was alright. It felt nice knowing these total strangers weren't going to judge me for a mental health crisis that I couldn't control. Later that day, I was at my girlfriend's apartment. While she was in the bathroom, her phone went off, revealing a string of texts from Susan. I didn't snoop through her phone. Texts on iPhones appear briefly for a few seconds while on sleep mode. Due to post-length rules, I'll give a brief summary. Susan thanked my girlfriend for coming to her wedding, but added that it was very rude to just get up and leave in the middle of the ceremony. Susan said she worked her butt off to make the wedding happen in spite of the pandemic, my girlfriend and I took attention away from her, and that I should have stayed home. I later told my girlfriend about the texts, and she apologized profusely for Susan's behavior. She said she never remembered her cousin acting like this, and maybe she was just caught up in the heat of the wedding. I'm sure that's true, but Susan's not the first person bothered by my panic attacks, and she won't be the last. Maybe I should have stayed home. I was already feeling panicky to begin with, but I left anyway because I love being around my girlfriend and her family. Maybe it was selfish of me to do this on such a special occasion as a wedding. Am I the a-hole? Edit, I don't think I made a big scene or anything. I had some staggered breathing, tremors, and felt lightheaded. There were about 12 to 15 people in the audience. I can understand, having to in that moment because the anxiety was getting a bit too much for you and that it was something you couldn't control, but I can fault you for not controlling your actions beforehand and, understanding where your anxiety takes you and realizing you could have removed yourself from that situation before it got to the vows, because even if you didn't want to, you still made a scene and you upset Susan on her wedding day. The world is already a stressful enough place, and I think you did make it a little bit more stressful than it needed to be at this time. I don't think you're a horrible person for doing so. I think you made a mistake, and I think that mistake could have not been made beforehand, but you stuck it out anyway, and as a result, this happened. I can't particularly fault you for wanting to do that and wanting to save face, but as a result of it, you've taken away from the ceremony, that's for sure, and it has had an impact. And as unfortunate as that is, you're the a-hole for that. Susan, unfortunately, has every right to be upset in this instance. Wanna Die 420 says, Gentle, you're the a-hole. Look, I empathize as I have an anxiety disorder and depression, but just because we can't help that we have them, doesn't mean we suddenly don't have to hold ourselves accountable for our actions and the way they affect folks regardless. It explains our behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. You were already feeling panicky, and given that you knew a breakdown was coming, it's a little bit selfish to have gone to someone's wedding expecting their family to make you feel better. Honestly, Susan's reaction was valid. It's understandable to be hurt in her position, like going to one of her most emotional milestones, not to be there to support her, but to use it as a distraction is a little, self-centered. At the end of the day, you do owe her an apology. I agree with this also, especially the point about OP wanting the girlfriend's family to make them feel better. Knowing that the girlfriend and family were already obligated to the wedding, it was kinda selfish to go solely for their support. My husband suffers from social anxieties, and he usually avoids them like the plague. However, if he decides to go anyway, then he holds himself together and excuses himself at the appropriate time, which isn't in the middle of the ceremony. And OP says, "You're right. I was so focused on trying to help myself that I didn't take into account how others might react to my panic attack during a wedding versus anywhere else. I left a voicemail and text to Susan apologizing for what I did. I had no malicious intent, and I hope she doesn't see it that way either." I think over-communication could have helped in the hours leading to the panic attack. Letting your partner, or whoever your designated person is, know when you're feeling close to a panic attack will always yield opportunities for you to receive proper care and not cause alarm for others. This is something you could have communicated well in advance too. That way, the bride and groom would have a heads up and make accommodations for you. Deleted account says, "A very, very gentle, you're the a-hole. As someone who suffers from autism and anxiety, it's my responsibility to make sure that my issues don't affect others negatively. If I know I'm having a bad day, it's up to me to make sure I either stay home or put plans in place to make sure things still run smoothly. The world doesn't revolve around my condition, and I shouldn't expect it to." I completely agree. If you were having a great day, and then something like a strobe light or a loud noise triggered you, you are very welcome to leave quietly. But if you're already feeling bad, you have to react to that. OP could have easily accounted for it in this case. I completely agree with you. Part of being on the spectrum is learning to cope with your environment and avoiding triggers when possible. That's a huge part of the education process. Part of the responsibility should have been on the girlfriend, however. My husband has ASD, and while he is responsible for himself, if I notice that he's having a bad day, I will try to do what I can to make it better. Giving him extra time to himself, giving him a massage when the anxiety and stress causes tension, etc. He does the same for me when I have a bad day, though I'm neurotypical. It's not the girlfriend's job to baby him, but when your significant other is having a bad day, cased anxiety, ASD, PTSD or whatever, then altering the plans may be necessary. She could have suggested going without him or staying at home with him. And Liar's Little Pretty says, well, you know the feelings that are about to bring on a panic attack, it seems, so you should start listening to them and plan accordingly. It was a bit rude to leave during that moment and then come back like everything was fine without apologizing for the disruption, so slight you're the a-hole." And OP does an edit too in their post saying, "I now see that I am the a-hole here, but thanks for also being understanding of my disorder. I hope Susan will accept my apology. I never meant to ruin the wedding, but I shouldn't have used it as a way to make myself feel better. I should have stayed home and found someone else to talk through my panic attack. I just thought my girlfriend would have been the best person at the moment." And now onto the update. Thank you for the feedback. The final consensus was I'm the a-hole, but I think the many not the a-holes I received had some good points too. I shouldn't have gone to the wedding when I was about to have a panic attack, but as long as I was there, leaving before I could really make a scene was the best I could do at the moment, albeit poorly timed. I left Susan both a text and a voicemail apologizing for taking attention away from her. I had no malicious intent, and was simply trying to solve a mental health crisis in what I thought was the best option, being with my girlfriend rather than by myself. Nevertheless, I shouldn't have used a wedding to make myself feel better. Later that night, Susan texted me saying she accepted my apology and that she would be off her phone for a while for her honeymoon. I was happy that Susan forgave me, but for a while, my mind went into a dark place about the whole ordeal with panic attacks. I'd spent a lifetime being treated like there was something wrong with me, whether from my abusive father or others who didn't know or care enough to act with my best interests at heart. My own mum tried to get rid of me as a baby before giving my dad full custody. I wished I could just disappear. One psych eval and several counselling sessions later, I'm on a more stable path mentally than a few weeks ago. I was given stronger meds that I could take right before I have another panic attack. I also want to get some sort of support animal to have in my apartment. I'm not going to let my disorder keep me from living my life, but I'll probably stay away from larger social functions until I'm comfortable enough to do so again. I look forward to a nice Thanksgiving with my girlfriend's family this week. Thank you again for helping me put my situation into perspective. I may have been the a-hole at the wedding, but I'll try to be more mindful of future social gatherings from now on. And in the comments, happy to hear you're taking steps toward taking care of yourself to potentially prevent attacks like this in the future. Also, congrats on the future support pet. I find my dog is a huge help with my personal struggles with anxiety. Oh, believe you me, I'd love to get a dog, but I'm a college student in a studio apartment, not the ideal circumstances for that kind of pet. If you do consider yourself a smaller pet like a rabbit, definitely take a look at r/rabbits for care advice and tips. Rabbits are so lovely, but I find they require a bit more maintenance than a cat or dog, considering their diets and destruction levels. If you're renting, I don't know if a rabbit is a great idea because they can chew up carpet, door frames, and would need a good span to run around in your house. Definitely explore your options though. I'm glad you're in a better place. Perhaps a suggestion? It seems like you were on edge from a fight with your dad, and in this post, you confirmed it was him that was abusive. It might be best to discontinue contact either temporarily or permanently, especially if he can still put you that much on edge as an adult. Just a thought to aid in your mental health journey. Nolan358 says, "Good for you for reaching out to the bride and smoothing things over. That must have been very hard for you. I'm sure the bride knew deep down that it wasn't malicious. I have also been somebody to struggle with mental health issues, and even now, after dealing with it for many years, I avoid large crowds or bigger social gatherings. It's just not worth the impact it has on my head. My dog is my safe space. She's not a service dog, but she makes a night and day difference to my life. Just food for thought, and good luck." Posted by user Stir Shine. Titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she doesn't deserve my sympathy anymore?" Hello again, Reddit. I know the title makes me sound like a complete jerk, but hear me out. In 2019, my sister, referred to as A, was kicked out of our parents' home after walking out on an argument. They threw all of her things in the driveway and kept what they wanted to keep. Right after this argument with A happened, I received several nasty phone calls and texts about how I manipulated A into leaving them and that I was dead to them. Spoiler alert, I was bought. Or not, I guess, I don't know. A moved in with a cousin who lived closer to her job, and lived there for about 8 months. After several fights with our cousin, A decided to leave, saying that trying to convince our cousin was like fighting a brick wall. I figured A would move into a dorm room, considering she was at the time a college student. A story for another day. But to my surprise, A moved back in with our parents, something I turned down when offered. Since then, A has been non-stop complaining about things our parents do, to the point where it drives me crazy and affects my mental health. I get that people need to vent, but it's constant. A few days ago, I finally had enough and told A in a family group chat that she did this to herself and knew that what she was walking into, so I no longer feel bad for her and the spot she's in. My stepmom, the one I actually can stand, almost immediately told me that that was the wrong thing to say. But I told her that I'm standing by my words. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. Sorry about the missing info. Here's some more context. I was on a break at work and only had 15 minutes to type this out. A and I's parents got divorced when we were very young, so my parents are considered to be my mum and her wife, as they were the ones who raised us. My father and his wife, my stepmom, are the only other two in the group chat, and they both feel the same way I do. As to why I did it publicly, A is known to manipulate others into doing what she wants and does lie. I don't know, I feel like it is kind of tacky to do that in the group chat. This is something that I feel like you could have dealt with in private with A, but instead you decided to say it in front of everyone and make a bigger issue of it. Yes, it may be affecting your mental health, and yeah, maybe it was the right thing to say, but it was definitely not the time and place for it. I feel like you could have discussed this with her in private, instead of saying that in front of the entire family. I'm getting a right message, wrong place vibe. And wrong place still makes you an a-hole, even if the message didn't make you an a-hole, per se. Now in the comments, Fleagle2212 says, you would be not the a-hole, except for in a family group chat. You're the a-hole. This is very confusing. Who made those nasty phone calls? Who was she arguing with before being kicked out? Why is there a stepmom around if your parents live together with your sister? Sorry, I was quickly writing this on my break at work. My parents, my mum and her wife, made the calls to me. Same parents, as I mentioned, was who A was arguing with. My father and his wife are those who I get along with. Okay, that makes sense. I think you're the a-hole. Your sister did nothing bad to you, and she might not have had any other option than moving back. You could have told her that you don't want to receive her rants, but the way you said it is very confrontational for no reason, and a family chat is definitely not the place. You may be the a-hole for saying it, but it doesn't mean you're wrong. You're the a-hole for saying it in front of other members of the family. You could have caught this earlier and set up boundaries and enforced them, but you let it fester until you snapped. That's on you. It's okay to feel frustrated and drained by that, but grow up about it and talk about your feelings instead of just lashing out when you've had enough. Info. How old is A? What were they arguing about, and did they keep anything that belonged to her? I'm trying to determine if parents and brother are abusing a child or otherwise being a-holes. A at the time was 21. They were arguing about how A was not keeping things up to standard with cleaning. They've been fighting about that since A was 14. Honestly, not the worst they've done to either of us. Got it. And did they keep anything that she bought? They did. She got it back when she moved back in. And now on to the update. So I pulled Aid aside and spoke to her before I went into work this morning. I apologized both for what I said and where I said it. Neither were appropriate, but at the time felt justified. When she asked me why I said what I did, I was honest with her. I explained that I wasn't ready to fully face the reality of what our parents did to us, and that my current wrist situation was already more than I could handle. I also explained that her venting, though it's needed, brings back so much of that past that I'm not ready to face. A sounded like she understood, but was all for rubbing it in my face about how much of a jerk I was, in typical A fashion. All in all, the conversation went well, and A accepted my apology like she usually does. I can only hope that she takes my words seriously, and we can both move on. It sounds like you're very self-aware now of some of the problems you both face. I would recommend therapy for you 1000%, you and your sister. You need to process in a healthy way what happened to you, not keeping it bottled up like a bomb, and anyone complaining about your parents sets it off. I'm a habitual complainer. Usually, I good-naturedly gripe about things in my life, and my friends and family are aware that I'm grumpy and can tell me to chill anytime. The problem here is that your sister also seems not to be able to drop the subject. As in, her problems are not getting solved by just her venting. You could try having a conversation with her about how when she's ready to do something to help change her circumstances, you'll be there for her. This is going to continue to be tough until there's healthy coping mechanisms all around. No a-holes here. I'm very proud of you for accepting your judgments and making a really awesome effort to grow yourself and apologize. Yeah. Hopefully once the pandemic is over I can start. I know it's been needed for a long time, but I just can't afford it. Patatiet Patata says, sounds like you've been trying to establish boundaries and your sister is stomping all over them. If it's unhealthy for you to keep being dragged into drama concerning your mum and stepmom, I think you're fully in your right to ask your sister to stop. Parents who told you were dead to them for seemingly no good reason don't get to keep judging you. The way you went at it is not best, but you already know that and you've shown that you want to do better. You've apologized to your sister. You sound young, and it seems you grew up with unhealthy family dynamics. Do yourself a favor, and as soon as possible, find someone to talk to. You need to learn what a normal upbringing should have brought you so that you can deal and navigate those situations the best. Suggest to your sister to also seek counseling. Through her school, she's likely to have some free or reduced options, since it appears she went back to an unhealthy and abusive household on her own, which is what victims often end up doing, locking them further into a vicious circle. And OP replies, this post pretty much sums up my life. My mum and stepmom weren't always this bad, but it got a lot worse after we moved to Florida. I've done my best to separate myself from them, but it's not easy when it's all I grew up with. I've done my best to break the cycle. My boyfriend has done his best to show me something a bit more normal with his family, but I find it strange. My sister hasn't been as lucky. She falls into the same habits as our mother, which sucks, because we both used to be each other's rock of stability. Now she relies on me to keep things stable, and I can't turn to her anymore without it being tossed in my face. It sucks, but I'm borderline cutting them all off. I can't take the stress of them and my medical issues at the same time. G'day there guys, and that's the end of today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed it and were entertained by today's bloody good content. As always, I want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to all my channel members and Patreon subscribers. Your beautiful faces and names will be up on screen right now. Haven't forgot about you guys, sorry I was taking a little break there. So yeah, if you see yourself, give yourself a pat on the back. If you want to be on this screen, there's links down in the description below where you can sign up and help support the channel and all future projects that I'm going to be doing on this one. With all that said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to. I'll see you in the next episode, and I do hope you enjoy it. Thank you.